English through Sherlock Holmes. What Sherlock Holmes teaches us about fear. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Vibrant Friday. I'm very happy to have you here with me today. In today's lesson, we are going to learn English through literature, and more specifically, through the fascinating world of Sherlock Holmes. Our topic today is something that every human being experiences at some point in life: fear. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of losing someone you love? Are you afraid of failure? Are you afraid of making the wrong decision? Or perhaps you are afraid of something you cannot fully understand. Fear is a natural part of being human. But have you ever thought about what fear does to the way we think? Does fear always protect us? Or can fear sometimes prevent us from seeing the truth clearly? Today, we're going to explore these questions through the stories of Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is a fictional detective created by the British author Arthur Conan Doyle. His stories are works of literature, but they also contain many interesting observations about human nature. So, as we explore Sherlock Holmes today, we are going to do two things together. First, we will improve our English by learning useful vocabulary and expressions from literature. And second, we will explore some life lessons about fear that we can apply to our own lives. So, take a moment, relax, and let's explore the world of Sherlock Holmes together. Let's begin. Fear has always been part of human nature, and literature often reveals its many forms. One of the best examples comes from the detective stories of Arthur Conan Doyle, where fear is rarely portrayed as a monster to be defeated. Instead, fear is presented as a force that clouds judgment, influences decisions, and exposes the deepest parts of human character. Let's pause here for a moment. There are several useful English expressions in this slide. For example, clouds judgment. When something clouds our judgment, it makes it difficult for us to think clearly or make a good decision. And this is an important idea for today's lesson. Fear doesn't always change the situation around us. Sometimes, it changes the way we see the situation. So now let's look at someone who faces frightening situations but refuses to allow fear to control his thinking. Let's see what Sherlock Holmes can teach us about emotional discipline. Throughout the Sherlock Holmes stories, Holmes himself rarely appears fearless. Rather, he demonstrates emotional discipline. When faced with dangerous criminals, mysterious murders, or seemingly impossible cases, he does not allow fear to control his thinking. He gathers facts, observes carefully, and separates evidence from emotion. Holmes reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear but the ability to think clearly despite it. I really like this idea: courage is not the absence of fear. In other words, being courageous doesn't mean that you never feel afraid. It means that you can feel fear and still choose what to do next. This is something we can all apply to our lives. Before an important presentation, you may feel nervous. Before making a difficult decision, you may feel uncertain. When facing a problem, you may feel afraid. But perhaps the question isn't, how can I stop being afraid? Perhaps the better question is, how can I think clearly while I am afraid? And Holmes gives us one possible answer: observe. Gather facts. Separate evidence from emotion. But what happens when fear becomes so powerful that it changes the way people see reality? Let's look at the people Holmes encounters. In contrast, many of the people Holmes encounters are overwhelmed by fear. Witnesses often misinterpret what they see because panic distorts their perception. Criminals make mistakes because guilt and fear drive them into irrational decisions. Victims sometimes hide the truth because they fear judgment more than danger itself. These moments illustrate an important psychological lesson: fear changes the way we think long before it changes our circumstances. Let's think about that last sentence again: fear changes the way we think long before it changes our circumstances. This is a powerful idea. Imagine that you are waiting for the result of an important exam. Nothing has actually happened yet. But your mind starts imagining the worst. You think, I'm going to fail. Everyone will be disappointed in me. My future is ruined. The circumstances haven't changed. But your thoughts have changed. And suddenly, something that has not happened yet feels real. This is one of the ways fear can influence us. And Doyle explores this idea beautifully in one of the most famous Sherlock Holmes stories. It is a story about a woman who has lived with fear for a long time. Let's meet Helen Stoner. One memorable example is found in The Adventure of the Speckled Band. Helen Stoner lives in constant fear after witnessing the mysterious death of her sister. Her fear is understandable, yet it also reflects how uncertainty can be more frightening than the truth itself. Holmes refuses to let fear shape his conclusions. Instead, he patiently investigates every clue until the mystery is solved. The story reminds us that understanding the source of our fear often weakens its power. There is an important word here: uncertainty. Uncertainty means that we don't know what is going to happen or what something really means. And sometimes uncertainty is more frightening than the truth. Think about it. When you hear a strange noise at night, your imagination may create 10 possible explanations. Most of them may be completely wrong. But because you don't know the truth, your mind fills in the empty spaces. This leads us to another famous Sherlock Holmes story, and perhaps the perfect example of fear, imagination, and uncertainty. The Hound of the Baskervilles. Another powerful lesson appears in The Hound of the Baskervilles. The legend of a supernatural hound terrifies generations of the Baskerville family. Many people accept the terrifying story without questioning it because fear makes the impossible seem believable. Holmes approaches the legend with curiosity rather than panic. By relying on evidence instead of assumptions, he uncovers a human explanation behind what seemed supernatural. The novel teaches that fear often grows strongest when our imagination fills the gaps left by uncertainty. This is perhaps one of the most important lessons we can take from Sherlock Holmes. When we are afraid, our imagination can become very powerful. A small problem can become a disaster. A question can become a certainty. A possibility can become something that feels like a fact. But Holmes does something different. He asks, what is the evidence? Instead of asking, what could go wrong, he asks, what do we actually know? That is a very useful habit in everyday life. So, how can we apply this lesson to ourselves? Let's move from literature to real life. These stories offer timeless wisdom for personal development. Like Holmes, we can learn to pause before reacting, examine the facts instead of our assumptions, and replace panic with thoughtful action. Fear may be unavoidable, but it does not have to become the author of our decisions. Let's turn these ideas into something practical. The next time you feel afraid, try 3 simple steps. First, pause. Don't immediately react. Second, observe. Ask yourself, what do I actually know? Third, question your assumptions. Ask, what am I imagining, and what do I know for certain? You don't have to eliminate fear. You simply need to avoid allowing fear to make every decision for you. And that brings us to the deeper lesson of today's story. Sherlock Holmes teaches us that the greatest mystery is often not the world around us but the fear within us. Once we understand it, we gain the clarity and courage to move forward with confidence. So, perhaps the real mystery isn't always, what is happening outside of me? Sometimes the more important question is, what is happening inside my mind? What am I afraid of? Why am I afraid of it? Is my fear based on facts? Or is my imagination filling in the gaps? These are questions worth asking, not only when we face danger, but also when we face everyday challenges. We hope you have enjoyed learning English and exploring the idea of fear through the stories of Sherlock Holmes. Sometimes, the most fearful thing in our lives is not the circumstance itself, but the fear that exists inside our own minds. Fear is part of being human. We may not always be able to control what happens around us, but we can learn to control how we respond. So, before you leave, I would like to give you a question to think about. What are you most afraid of losing in your life? And another question, is that fear helping you make better decisions, or is it controlling your decisions? Take some time to think about it. And if you would like, share your answer in the comments. Remember, there is no right or wrong answer. Your experience may help someone else who is facing a similar fear. And before we say goodbye, remember these 3 words from today's lesson: pause, observe, think. Don't let fear tell you what is true before you have looked at the evidence. Thank you so much for watching Vibrant Friday. I hope you enjoyed learning English through literature, and I hope today's story gave you something meaningful to think about. Keep learning. Keep reading. Keep questioning. And most importantly, keep looking beyond what you see at first. I'll see you in the next lesson. Take care, and have a wonderful day.